Hey, science lovers! Welcome to Easy English Podcast, where we explore scientific vocabulary, conduct exciting experiments, and learn cool facts, all while improving your English.
That's right. Whether you love chemistry, physics, biology, or just enjoy learning about experiments, this podcast is for you.
Before we dive into today's discussion, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Sarah, a huge fan of biology, environmental science, and hands-on experiments. If it helps us understand the natural world, I love it.
And I'm Alex. I'm passionate about physics, chemistry, and the fun of conducting experiments. Whether it's testing reactions or exploring scientific discoveries, I'm excited to share my knowledge.
Okay, Alex, let's start with the big question. Why do you think learning scientific vocabulary is important?
Great question. First, science is everywhere, from cooking to technology to medicine. Understanding basic scientific terms helps people communicate better in many situations.
Exactly. If you're reading a science article, watching an experiment video, or working in a scientific field, knowing the correct vocabulary makes everything clearer.
Plus, science is about curiosity. The more you learn, the more you understand how things work.
That's why today's episode is packed with essential words, practical demonstrations, and exciting discussions.
Here's what we'll explore today. First, we'll cover essential science vocabulary, key terms related to experiments, lab equipment, and scientific concepts.
Then we'll conduct a simple experiment demonstration, explaining the steps and discussing observations.
We'll also explore how talking about science can help improve English fluency, with tips on describing experiments and discussing results.
And finally, we'll wrap things up with a fun science challenge. I'll describe an experiment, and Alex has to guess what it demonstrates.
Before we begin, here's a question for you, listeners. What's your favorite science experiment? And how would you describe it in English?
Let us know in the comments or send us a message. We love hearing about different science discoveries.
All right, grab your safety goggles, put on your thinking cap, and let's dive into the world of science.
All right, Alex, let's break down science vocabulary. Understanding scientific terms makes it easier to follow experiments, read research papers, and discuss discoveries.
Absolutely. Whether you're working in a lab, reading a science article, or watching an experiment, knowing the right words helps connect ideas and improves communication.
Let's start with some basic scientific terms. First, we have hypothesis, which is an educated guess or prediction before an experiment.
Yes. A hypothesis is based on observations and can be tested to see if it's correct.
Then we have variables, the factors that change in an experiment. What are the main types of variables, Alex?
Great question. We have independent variables, which are changed by the scientist, and dependent variables, which are measured to see the effect of changes.
Right. And every experiment needs a control group, a comparison group that doesn't receive the experiment's changes.
Another key term is data, the information collected during an experiment, often recorded in charts or graphs.
Listeners, which of these terms do you use the most? Tell us.
Okay, Sarah, let's talk about lab tools. What's one piece of equipment every scientist uses?
Definitely a microscope. It helps us see tiny organisms, cells, and detailed structures we can't see with the naked eye.
Great choice. Another essential tool is a beaker, a glass container used for mixing and measuring liquids.
Right. And don't forget test tubes, small tubes for holding and heating substances during experiments.
And for precise measurements, scientists use pipettes, tools that transfer small amounts of liquid accurately.
Listeners, do you use any of these tools? Let us know. All right, let's go over some process-related terms. Every experiment follows a method. What's the first step, Alex?
Step 1. Observe. Scientists first observe a phenomenon and ask questions about it.
Right. Then comes research, studying previous experiments and gathering information before testing an idea.
After that, scientists form a hypothesis, a statement predicting the expected outcome of an experiment.
Next is the experiment, testing the hypothesis by performing trials.
And finally, we analyze results and draw conclusions based on the data collected.
Listeners, have you ever conducted an experiment? Tell us how you described it in English. All right, Alex, let's do something exciting. A simple experiment that listeners can try at home. What do you have in mind?
How about the classic baking soda and vinegar reaction? It's a great way to demonstrate chemical reactions and gas formation.
Perfect. This experiment is simple, safe, and fun. Plus, it helps explain key scientific concepts like acid-base reactions and carbon dioxide production.
Listeners, if you want to follow along, grab some baking soda, vinegar, a cup, and a spoon.
All right, let's start. Step 1. Place a few tablespoons of baking soda into a cup.
Step 2. Slowly pour vinegar into the cup and observe what happens.
Whoa! Look at that bubbling reaction. The mixture starts fizzing and releasing gas.
That's because baking soda, a base, reacts with vinegar, an acid, producing carbon dioxide gas.
Listeners, if you're trying this at home, what do you notice? Describe your observations.
All right, let's explain what's happening. Baking soda contains sodium bicarbonate and vinegar contains acetic acid.
When they mix, they undergo a chemical reaction producing carbon dioxide gas, water, and sodium acetate.
That's why we see bubbles. The gas escapes into the air, creating a fizzing effect.
This reaction is similar to how yeast makes bread rise. It releases carbon dioxide, creating air pockets.
Listeners, can you think of other everyday reactions like this? Let us know.
So, what did we learn from this experiment?
First, we saw how acids and bases react to produce gas.
Second, we learned that carbon dioxide is released in many natural processes like respiration and fermentation.
And finally, we saw how simple household ingredients can demonstrate scientific principles.
Listeners, what did you learn from this experiment? Share your thoughts.
Science is all about curiosity, asking questions, testing ideas, and making discoveries.
Absolutely. And the best part? You don't need a fancy lab. Science is everywhere.
All right, next up, we'll talk about how discussing experiments can help improve English fluency. Should we continue?
All right, Alex, here's a thought. Did you ever consider that discussing science can actually improve English skills?
Of course. Science conversations involve so many different types of vocabulary, action words, descriptive terms, and structured explanations.
Exactly. Whether someone is describing an experiment, reading research findings, or watching a science documentary, they're constantly exposed to rich language.
And science discussions encourage critical thinking. When people explain concepts, compare results, or ask questions, they naturally improve their communication skills.
One simple way to improve fluency is to describe an experiment in full sentences. Instead of saying, "I mixed two liquids," try adding details.
For example, say, "I combined baking soda with vinegar, which produced bubbles because of a chemical reaction releasing carbon dioxide gas."
Yes. Using specific vocabulary like chemical reaction, gas formation, and acid-base interaction makes sentences richer.
Listeners, here's your challenge. Describe an experiment in 3 sentences. Another great way to improve English. Read science blogs, articles, or even research papers.
Yes, these resources introduce terms like hypothesis, observation, variables, and more. Key vocabulary for discussing experiments.
And scientific reading improves comprehension. Learning how experiments are structured helps with understanding instructions.
Listeners, your challenge: find a science article, read it, and write down 5 new words.
One of the best ways to improve listening comprehension. Watch science documentaries like Cosmos or National Geographic.
Right. These shows help you hear natural explanations, making it easier to understand how scientists discuss discoveries.
Plus, hearing phrases like observe the reaction, record the data, or analyze the findings helps with learning structured English.
Listeners, if you've watched a science video recently, tell us what you learned. Want to improve your speaking skills? Join a science club, visit a museum, or follow online science forums.
Yes. When you talk with others about experiments, you naturally practice conversation, ask questions, and exchange knowledge.
And the best part? Since science discussions are logical and structured, they improve the ability to explain concepts clearly.
Listeners, do you talk about science with friends? Let us know how it helps your English.
Science isn't just about discovery, it's an incredible way to practice English every day.
Absolutely. If you love experiments, use science discussions to improve fluency naturally.
All right, next up, we've got a fun challenge. I'll describe an experiment, and Alex has to guess what it demonstrates. All right, Alex, before we finish, let's play a game. Guess the experiment. I'll describe an experiment, and you have to guess what scientific principle it demonstrates.
Sounds fun. Let's do it.
Okay, first experiment. Imagine you have 2 glasses of water, one hot and one cold. You add the same amount of food coloring to each. In one, the color spreads quickly, while in the other, it moves slowly. What scientific principle is being demonstrated?
That sounds like diffusion. The food coloring moves faster in hot water because heat increases molecular movement.
Correct. All right, next one. This experiment involves dropping 2 objects, one heavier than the other, from the same height at the same time. Surprisingly, they land at the same time. What does this demonstrate?
Oh, easy, gravity and acceleration. Objects fall at the same rate regardless of their weight, as long as their resistance is negligible.
Exactly. Okay, last one. This involves rubbing a balloon on your hair and then holding it near small paper bits. The paper jumps toward the balloon. What's happening?
That must be static electricity. Rubbing the balloon transfers electrons, giving it an electrical charge that attracts the paper.
Nice work, Alex. Listeners, how many did you guess correctly? Tell us in the comments.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. We've explored science vocabulary, conducted experiments, and even played a fun guessing game.
And hopefully you picked up some great English phrases along the way. Talking about experiments is a fantastic way to improve vocabulary and fluency.
So, listeners, what's your favorite science experiment? How would you describe it?
Send us your answers. We'd love to hear about different scientific discoveries.
And don't forget, if you enjoyed today's episode, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more science discussions.
All right, science lovers, thanks for hanging out with us. Keep experimenting and learning.
See you next time.